Picture this. Red and blue lights come on behind you. You pull over. The officer walks up to your window and says, "Where are you headed tonight?" Seems harmless, right? Most people answer immediately. "I'm just coming from a friend's house. I'm heading home. I'm going to pick something up." But what many drivers do not realize is this: that simple conversation can quickly turn into a fishing expedition. One sentence can accidentally give an officer reasonable suspicion to keep questioning you longer, ask for consent to search, or start looking for inconsistencies. So what do? Can you refuse to answer? Should you stay silent? What if the officer keeps pushing? If knowing your rights matters to you, subscribe now. Share this with someone who needs it and drop your opinion below. Because the truth is, the roadside is not the place to talk your way out of a stop. And today, you're going to learn the 3 things you should never say when police ask where you're going, why officers ask that question in the first place, and the exact calm phrases that protect your rights without escalating the encounter. One bad answer can change the entire direction of a traffic stop. If you sound nervous, overly detailed, defensive, or inconsistent, the officer may begin looking for other reasons to prolong the stop. Maybe they ask you to step out. Maybe they start asking about drugs, weapons, or alcohol. Maybe they ask for consent to search your vehicle. And here's the important part. Many searches begin with voluntary conversation, not hard evidence. That's why understanding how to respond matters. Now, let's break down the first mistake. The first thing you should never say is, "Why do you need to know?" A lot of people say this out of frustration, but tone matters during police encounters, even when you are legally correct. Here's how it often sounds. "Officer, where are you headed tonight?" Driver, "Why does that matter? I don't have to tell you anything." Now, legally, in many situations, you may not be required to explain your travel plans, but immediately turning the stop into a confrontation usually does not help you. Why? Because now the officer's attention shifts from the original traffic issue to your behavior and attitude. The stop becomes emotionally charged instead of controlled. That does not mean you surrender your rights. It means you protect them calmly. A better response sounds like this. "Officer, I prefer not to discuss my day. Am I being detained or am I free to go?" That sentence matters for several reasons. First, it stays respectful. Second, it avoids volunteering unnecessary information. Third, it redirects the interaction toward the legal status of the stop. You are not arguing, you are clarifying. And that phrase, "Am I free to go?" is important because it forces a distinction. Either the officer continues the detention based on legal grounds, or the encounter may end. Now, here's the second thing you should never say. Never start over-explaining where you're going. This one is one of the biggest mistakes people make. "Officer, where are you headed?" Driver, "Oh, nowhere weird. I was just at my cousin's house for like 20 minutes, and then we stopped at a gas station, and now I'm trying to get home before my wife gets mad because I had 1 beer earlier, but that was hours ago." Notice what just happened. The driver introduced alcohol without being asked, added unnecessary details, sounded nervous, and created multiple things the officer can now investigate further. Officers are trained to observe behavior. Rapid talking, inconsistent timelines, and excessive explanation can raise suspicion, even if you have done nothing illegal. Silence is often safer than improvisation. That does not mean acting hostile. It means being controlled. If you choose not to answer questions about your travel plans, a calm response could be, "Officer, I'm choosing to remain silent." Or, "I would like to exercise my right to remain silent." Simple, clear, non-aggressive. And here's why that wording works. You are not arguing. You are not resisting. You are explicitly invoking a constitutional protection instead of just appearing evasive. That distinction matters, because casually refusing to answer can sometimes lead to more pressure. Clearly invoking your right to remain silent is stronger legally than awkwardly dodging questions. Now, let's talk about the third thing you should never say. Never lie about where you're going. This one destroys people. Some drivers panic and think a small lie will end the interaction faster. "Officer, where are you coming from?" Driver, "Work." Except the officer already saw bar wristbands, smelled alcohol, or noticed contradictory information. Now the issue is no longer just the original traffic stop. The officer starts wondering what else you might be hiding. Even small lies can escalate suspicion dramatically. And remember this, officers sometimes already know more than you think. Maybe another officer observed your vehicle earlier. Maybe there are surveillance cameras nearby. Maybe your passenger says something different. Do not create problems that weren't already there. If you don't want to answer, don't invent stories. Instead, calmly say, "Officer, I do not wish to answer questions." That phrase is far safer than trying to sound convincing. Now, let's address the next trap, consent searches. Because very often, the "where are you going" conversation isn't really about directions. It's about building enough comfort, nervousness, or suspicion to ask the next question. "You don't mind if I take a quick look inside the vehicle, do you?" This is where many drivers accidentally give away their rights. They think refusing consent automatically makes them look guilty. So they say, I guess that's okay." And suddenly the officer is searching the car. Understand this clearly. Consenting to a search can waive major legal protections later. If an officer asks you to search your vehicle and you don't want to consent, stay calm and say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." That sentence is extremely important. Notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't insult the officer. It doesn't physically resist. It doesn't interfere. It simply makes your lack of consent clear and verbal. Now, here's something people misunderstand all the time. Refusing consent does not guarantee the officer will still search the vehicle anyway. Under certain circumstances, police may still conduct a lawful search depending on probable cause, officer safety concerns, arrests, or other legal exceptions. But if you voluntarily consent, you may weaken your ability to challenge the search later. That's why the wording matters. Now, another important warning. Don't try to win the argument on the roadside. A traffic stop is not a courtroom. Even if you believe the officer is wrong, roadside debates usually increase tension and risk. Do not make sudden movements. Do not reach around the car unexpectedly. Do not interrupt aggressively. And never physically resist an officer during a disputed encounter. If an officer gives a lawful command, comply physically while verbally protecting your rights. That can sound like this: "I am not resisting, but I do not consent." That phrase can become very important later because it separates physical compliance from legal agreement. Now, let's talk about one more critical distinction. In some states, drivers may be legally required to provide identifying information during lawful stops. Generally, you may also have to provide license, registration, and proof of insurance when required by law. But casual investigative questions are different from identification requirements. Questions like, "Where are you going? What were you doing tonight? Who were you with? Do you have anything illegal in the car?" Those questions often seek voluntary admissions, and voluntary admissions make cases easier to build. That's why controlled communication matters. Now, none of this means every officer is trying to violate your rights. Some officers are simply gathering information during a routine stop. But your job is not to help build a case against yourself accidentally. Your job is to stay calm, stay respectful, and avoid giving away rights through nervous conversation. So let's put the safest framework together. If police ask where you're going, avoid arguing. Avoid over-explaining. Avoid lying. Keep your hands visible. Comply with lawful commands. Provide legally required documents when necessary. And if you choose not to answer investigative questions, stay calm and use clear phrases like, "Officer, I prefer not to discuss my day. I'm exercising my right to remain silent. Am I being detained or am I free to go? Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Short, calm, and controlled. Because the less unnecessary information you volunteer, the less opportunities there are for misunderstandings, inconsistencies, or escalation. And remember, laws vary depending on the state, the circumstances of the stop, and specific facts. This video is educational information, not personal legal advice. But understanding these principles before you ever see flashing lights behind you can completely change how you handle the encounter. And in the next video, we're breaking down the 5 words drivers say during DUI stops that officers are specifically trained to listen for, and how those statements can be used against you later in court.